What happens if you pour nothing but rainwater onto your hydrangeas and stop using your tap water completely? Most gardeners never think twice about what comes out of their hose. But the water you use could be quietly working against your hydrangea, blocking the very blooms you're trying to grow. What I'm about to show you might completely change how you water this plant, and once you see the difference, you'll never look at a rain barrel the same way again. Stick around, because the results surprised even me. Before we dig in, if you love simple, no-nonsense growing tips that actually work, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell. I post new videos every week that help you get more blooms, healthier soil, and fewer plant problems, all without spending extra money. Now, let's get into it. Let's talk about what rainwater actually is, because most people assume it's just water. It isn't. Rainwater is one of the purest forms of water available to a gardener, and its chemistry is very different from what comes out of your tap. First, rainwater is naturally soft. That means it's almost completely free of dissolved minerals like calcium and magnesium, the minerals that build up in kettles, pipes, and on shower doors. Tap water, by contrast, is often hard, loaded with these minerals because it's been treated and pushed through miles of municipal pipes. Softness matters a lot for certain plants, and hydrangeas are one of them, which we'll get to shortly. Second, rainwater is slightly acidic. As raindrops fall through the atmosphere, they pick up tiny amounts of carbon dioxide, which forms a weak carbonic acid. This gives natural rainwater a pH typically between 5.5 and 6.5, sometimes even lower depending on your region's air quality. Tap water, on the other hand, is usually treated to be neutral or slightly alkaline, often sitting around 7 to 8.5 pH, specifically to protect metal pipes from corroding. That difference in pH is not a small technicality. It directly affects how a plant's roots absorb nutrients from the soil. Third, rainwater is essentially chlorine-free and fluoride-free. Municipal tap water is treated with chlorine or chloramine to keep it safe for humans to drink, and in many places, fluoride is added for dental health. These additives are harmless to us, but at a microscopic level, they can disrupt the delicate balance of beneficial microbes living in your soil, the same microbes that help break down organic matter and make nutrients available to plant roots. Rainwater carries none of this baggage. Fourth, rainwater is oxygen-rich and full of trace nitrogen. As rain falls, it absorbs small amounts of atmospheric nitrogen and converts it into forms like nitrate, which is a plant-usable form of nitrogen. It's a tiny amount compared to fertilizer, but it's a free, gentle top-up every single time it rains. Rainwater also tends to be more oxygenated than water sitting in a pipe or a stagnant tank, which can support healthier root respiration. Finally, rainwater carries essentially zero salt content. Tap water, well water, and especially softened household water treated with a water softener system often carry sodium or other dissolved salts. Over months and years, these salts accumulate in potting soil and garden beds, especially in areas with less rainfall to flush them out. Salt buildup is one of the most underrated causes of stunted, unhappy plants, and it's something rainwater simply doesn't contribute to. So to sum up the composition, rainwater is soft, mildly acidic, chlorine-free, salt-free, and lightly nitrogen-enriched. It sounds simple, but each one of those traits plays directly into what a hydrangea needs to actually thrive, which is exactly where we're headed next. Hydrangeas have a reputation for being fussy, but really they just have specific preferences, and once you understand them, everything clicks into place. The single most important factor for hydrangeas is soil pH, and this is where rainwater becomes a genuine game changer. Hydrangeas are famous for changing bloom color based on soil acidity, blue in acidic soil, pink in alkaline soil. But pH doesn't just affect color, it affects the plant's ability to absorb nutrients at all. In alkaline soil, aluminum and iron become locked up and unavailable to the roots, even if they're present in the soil. Hydrangeas need a slightly acidic environment, generally in the 5.5 to 6.5 range, to properly access these nutrients. Remember that number from the rainwater section? It's basically identical. Watering with something naturally in that same range helps maintain the acidic environment the plant already wants, instead of fighting against it every time you water with alkaline tap water. Next, hydrangeas are sensitive to salt and chlorine buildup, more so than a lot of common garden plants. Their roots are relatively shallow and fine, and chronic exposure to chlorinated or salty water can cause leaf tip burn, browning edges, and slowed growth over time. This is especially true for potted hydrangeas, where salts have nowhere to drain away and simply accumulate season after season. A plant that's fighting salt stress puts less energy into blooming and more energy into basic survival. Hydrangeas also need consistent moisture. Their name literally comes from the Greek word for water vessel. But it's not just about quantity of water, it's about quality. Because they drink so much, whatever is in that water gets delivered to the roots in large volumes, again and again. If your water source carries excess minerals or chlorine, a thirsty plant like a hydrangea will show the effects of that, faster than a plant that only sips occasionally. In terms of core nutrients, hydrangeas rely heavily on nitrogen for leafy green growth, phosphorus for strong root and bud development, and potassium for overall plant vigor and disease resistance. They also need aluminum and iron in accessible form for that signature blue coloring in acid-loving varieties, along with calcium and magnesium in modest amounts for cell structure. Here's the connection. Rainwater doesn't replace fertilizer, but it creates the correct pH environment that allows the nutrients already in your soil, and any fertilizer you apply to actually be absorbed. It's like unlocking a door that was already there. You could have all the nutrients in the world in your soil, but if the pH is wrong, the roots simply can't access them efficiently. So when you put these two puzzle pieces together, rainwater's soft, acidic, salt-free nature, and the hydrangea's need for a slightly acidic, low-salt environment to unlock its nutrients, you get a natural, cost-free match that's hard to improve on with anything from a bottle. When used consistently, rainwater offers real, visible benefits for hydrangeas. Gardeners who switch from hard tap water to rainwater often notice richer, deeper green foliage within a few weeks because the plant is no longer fighting chlorine or excess salts. Bloom color tends to become more vivid and saturated, especially in blue and purple varieties because the acidic pH helps aluminum stay available to the roots. Over a full growing season, many people also notice stronger stems, better resistance to leaf scorch, and less of that crispy, browning leaf edge that hydrangeas are prone to in hot weather. And because rainwater is free, it's one of the lowest effort upgrades you can make to your watering routine. But, and this is important, rainwater isn't automatically safe just because it's natural. There are real risks if you're not careful. If you're collecting rainwater from a roof, especially one with asphalt shingles, old paint, or nearby industrial pollution, that water can pick up contaminants, heavy metals, or bacteria along the way. Pouring contaminated runoff directly on your hydrangea can do far more harm than tap water ever would. Stored rainwater that sits stagnant in an open barrel for weeks can also become a breeding ground for mosquito larvae and harmful bacteria, which isn't great for soil health either. Overwatering is another real danger. Because rainwater feels free and natural, it's tempting to overdo it, but hydrangeas sitting in soggy, waterlogged soil are extremely prone to root rot, regardless of how pure the water is. Roots need oxygen just as much as they need water. Finally, timing and quantity still matter. Dumping a huge volume of cold rainwater onto a stressed or newly transplanted hydrangea can shock the roots. The benefits are real, but they only show up when you apply this correctly, which is exactly what we're covering next. Here's exactly how to do this the right way, step by step. Step 1. Collect your rainwater properly. Use a clean rain barrel or food-safe container placed under a downspout, ideally connected to a roof made of metal, tile, or asphalt shingles in good condition. Avoid roofs with flaking lead paint or heavy moss and debris buildup. Attach a simple mesh screen over the opening to filter out leaves, twigs, and debris, and to help keep mosquitoes out. Step 2. Let sediment settle. If your barrel doesn't have a built-in filter, let the collected water sit for a few hours after a rainstorm so any dirt or debris settles to the bottom. Draw water from the upper 2/3 of the barrel rather than scooping straight from the bottom. Step 3. Check the water is fresh. Try to use rainwater within 1 to 2 weeks of collection. Water that's been sitting stagnant for a long time in warm weather can develop bacteria or algae, which isn't ideal for root health. If it smells off or looks murky and green, don't use it, dump it, and start fresh. Step 4. Water at the base, not the leaves. Using a watering can or a hose attachment on a gentle setting, pour the rainwater slowly and directly onto the soil at the base of the plant, working in a circular pattern around the root zone. Avoid soaking the leaves and flower heads themselves, especially in full sun, since wet foliage combined with direct sunlight can lead to leaf scorch or fungal issues. Step 5. Apply the right amount. For an established in-ground hydrangea, aim for about 1 to 1.5 gallons of water per plant per watering session, enough to moisten the soil down to around 6 to 8 inches deep, roughly where most of the active root system lives. For potted hydrangeas, water slowly until you see a small amount drain from the bottom of the pot, which tells you the entire root ball has been reached. Step 6. Check soil moisture before rewatering. Stick your finger about 2 inches into the soil. If it's still moist, hold off. Hydrangeas like consistently moist soil, not constantly soggy soil, so let the top layer dry slightly between waterings. That's it. No complicated mixing, no dilution ratios, no special tools beyond a barrel and a watering can. The simplicity is part of what makes this method so appealing. Timing makes a real difference in how effective this is, so let's go through when to use rainwater and when to hold off. When not to use it, avoid heavy watering, rain, or tap during the coldest part of winter when the hydrangea is dormant and not actively taking up much water. Overwatering dormant roots in cold, wet soil is a common cause of root rot. Also avoid drenching the plant with a large volume of cold rainwater during a sudden cold snap or frost warning, since a rapid temperature and moisture shift can stress the roots. Skip watering, rain, or tap. If the soil is already visibly wet or waterlogged from recent rainfall, more water on top of saturated soil just suffocates the roots. And if you've just transplanted a hydrangea within the last 1 to 2 weeks, ease off larger volumes and stick to lighter, more frequent watering until the roots settle in. It's the ideal time to use it. The best window is during the active growing season, roughly spring through late summer, when the plant is putting out new leaves, stems, and buds, and actively drawing up water and nutrients. Early morning is the ideal time of day. Before the heat of the sun sets in, this lets the water soak deep into the root zone before it can evaporate, and it gives any moisture on the soil surface time to dry out before nightfall, reducing fungal risk. If mornings aren't possible, early evening is your second best option, but try to avoid watering at midday when evaporation is highest, and you'll lose a lot of that water before it ever reaches the roots. How often to apply it? During the growing season, hydrangeas generally like consistently moist soil, which usually means watering 2 to 3 times per week in average conditions, and potentially daily during a hot, dry stretch, especially for potted plants. There's no need to exclusively use rainwater every single time. Even alternating rainwater with tap water a few times a week will noticeably reduce mineral and chlorine buildup in the soil over a season. The key is consistency rather than volume. Little and often beats infrequent heavy soaking. So, how long until you actually see something happen? In the first 1 to 2 weeks, you likely won't see dramatic visual changes, but underneath the soil, the pH is beginning to shift toward the acidic range hydrangeas prefer, and salt residue from previous tap watering starts to gradually flush out. By around 3 to 4 weeks of consistent rainwater use, most people start noticing the foliage looking noticeably darker and glossier, with less of that dry, papery edge on the leaves. This is usually the first visible sign that something's working. By the 6 to 8 week mark, especially heading into or through a blooming cycle, you'll often see the real payoff, fuller, more vibrant blooms, and if you have a blue or purple variety, richer, deeper color saturation as the aluminum in the soil becomes more available to the roots. Stems also tend to look sturdier and less floppy, since a healthier root system supports stronger structural growth above ground. By the end of a full growing season, gardeners who've made the switch typically report a visibly happier, more vigorous plant overall. Bigger blooms, better color, and fewer of those crispy brown leaf edges that so many hydrangea owners struggle with every summer. So there you have it, one of the simplest, cheapest upgrades you can make in your garden, and one most people never even think about. Your hydrangea has been trying to tell you something with every scorched leaf and faded bloom, and now you know how to listen. Set up a rain barrel, start collecting, and give it a season. I think you'll be genuinely surprised by the difference. If this helped you out, do me a favor and hit subscribe, drop a thumbs up, and let me know in the comments how your hydrangeas are doing this season. I've got a lot more practical, no-fluff growing tips coming your way, so I'll see you in the next video.